This video accompanies the notes on Chapter 2 in the Microeconomics course. These correspond to the Arnold textbook. This chapter, Economic Activities, Producing and Trading. The combination of unlimited human wants and scarcity of resources requires choices. None of us can have it all. We can't be in two places at one time. We have to make decisions and allocate our resources to achieve those benefits that we value the most. The range of choices that we face is determined largely by the economic system in which we operate, and that also determines the available rationing device, that is, the means in which goods are distributed from one person or from within a society. An economy functions to transform natural and man-made resources into useful forms in accordance with individual and group decisions. Us as individuals, or as a couple, as a family, as a church, a business, a community organization, or of course as a government, as a society. Remember the factors of production? Let's review those. First of all is land, natural resources unaltered by human effort. The unspoiled lake or river, the stand of timber, the ores that are in the ground. Secondly, labor, human effort applied to production. This is not just the brute strength of human beings, that is their physical abilities, but also their intellectual abilities. Thirdly, capital, productive man-made goods, machinery, tools, and entrepreneurship, human capital, ingenuity, those particular sets of skills and abilities some people have to envision, to organize, and then to realize an enterprise, and therefore the benefits that it provides to others. There are three basic questions every society has to answer. What will be produced? That is, how will the various scarce resources in that economy or in that locale be used? How will it be produced? Who will produce it? What means will be used? What combination, for instance, of labor and capital will be used in the production process? And who's going to get it? That is, to whom will it be distributed? As we will see, it's really critical in an economy that these things be considered because they are interrelated. Now, first of all, what we want to do is look at how these questions are answered. First of all, in a one-person economy, it's the most simple system that we've got. In this case, I think it was Daniel Defoe was the author of the book Robinson Crusoe. You probably know the story where this Englishman is shipwrecked and he's stranded on a desert island by himself, or at least he so thinks for a little while. And so in that economy, what is produced is determined solely by him. He decides what to produce. He also has to figure out how, and that's going to be based on things that he values the most, but also will depend on the other constraints that he faces. It's all produced by him. That is, there's no one else to help him. How it's actually produced depends on the level of technology, productive goods that are available, and of course his own skills in using what's available to him, his own knowledge. And who gets it? Well, that's a no-brainer. He gets it all. He's got no one he has to be concerned about other than himself. Once we expand a bit and make this a two-person economy, it really becomes a lot more complex in that we introduce the opportunities for specialization and exchange. And these together work to increase what we call productivity. Productivity concerns the quantity of output produced from a given quantity of input, very often measured in per unit terms. In other words, it's a relative measure. And note that productivity is concerned with efficiency. It's about what you produce relative to what goes into it, or what effort is expended in producing that output. So it's always a relative measure. There are a number of measures of productivity that we experience and we deal with all the time. GDP per capita, that is gross domestic product, which is a measure of the wealth produced in an economy per capita in a given period. Miles per gallon, we often use to evaluate vehicles, cars, in terms of gas mileage. Words per minute, how many words someone can type in a period of time. There's so many other words. Even in athletics, of course, we have all kinds of percentages. Baseball, for instance, earned run averages and batting averages and things like that are common measures of productivity in sports. Specialization increases productivity in two basic ways. First of all, people are able to pursue some activity, some productive activity at which they are better. That is, to do something at which somebody is better, so we naturally tend to gravitate toward those things that we are more accomplished at and probably more interested in or enjoy more. All those things feed into let's say the notion of, or what it means to be able to choose something because you're better at it. Also, number two, having the incentive to focus on that task and develop better methods of accomplishing it. You can imagine if you build one log house, it's probably going to be a real struggle if it's the first one. That second one is going to be a lot easier because you learned a lot on that first one. The third one should be easier still. And in fact, you have developed better methods of doing it, shortcuts, so to speak, labor-saving devices, maybe even safety devices that have helped you to avoid problems. And so you may even have been able to develop tools or have the incentive by specialization to invest in tools that are specialized and will allow you to do the job better. The degree of specialization in a modern economy is really amazing. I have a niece who, her husband is a pediatric urologist. So he went to med school. Well, first he went to university, then he went to med school. Then he started to specialize into a variety of residencies. Really did without pay, without a lot of sleep, travel around the country. And so now he's a pediatric urologist. Now that's quite an area of specialization. Capital comes to mind. We're talking here about productive equipment. My wife and I have been to Uganda, East Africa, a number of times, and I'm always amazed when I get back of the high level of specialization in road building equipment, because in Uganda, for the most part, roads are built and maintained with men and with a big truck and gravel and tar and shovels and picks. And so our economy, we have a tremendous amount of specialization, and a better product is turned out at a much shorter period of time than if we had to do that in the old way. Now, how does the notion of specialization apply to an entire economy? Well, David Ricardo, an English economist or political economist, said it does apply, and here's how. He developed the theory of comparative advantage, and it's a notion whereby nations are encouraged to do the same things that individuals do to better themselves. That is, nations should specialize in what they do best and then exchange with other nations to get the things that they want. Basically, each nation will be better off if it does that. Honduras, for instance, can grow bananas, but let's say that they're not very good at growing timber. But Canada, on the other hand, grows tremendous amounts of timber, but it would really be expensive if they tried to grow their own bananas. So they are better off doing what they do well. Sometimes it's a matter of what the population is trained to do or able to do. Sometimes it may be a matter of geographical location, and as in the case of Honduras and Canada, of course, just a matter, in this case, of the climate, temperate climate versus a tropical climate. That they'll be better off if they do that. Specialize in what you do best and then exchange with other nations to get the other things you want. Someone may ask, well, what if this leads a country to produce goods and services that are of low value in the global economy? And one thing that's important to note is that the price one is willing to pay for a good is tied to her or his opportunity cost of producing those goods herself. In other words, through market processes, when I hire someone, for instance, to work on my car, one of the things I have to consider, and do consider, is what would it cost me in time and effort and special tools or knowledge to do that myself. And the amount I'm willing to pay to have my car fixed is in fact tied not just to what I think that person, their effort is worth, but in fact what I am giving up would have to give up the cost to me if I decided to try to do it myself. And so markets are pretty amazing. They have a way of building all that information in, so that in fact you might say, well, Honduras is really going to be on the short end of that stick because bananas are just not very valuable. But of course, we buy them in the stores all the time, and it may well be that there's not anything that a particular person like you or me does better than anybody else. But it's really a matter of what you do better than you do anything else that's important. Allocating resources across time. In regard to trade and exchange, we're not just looking at trading events at a particular point in time like bananas and timber. We also have the opportunity, especially through financial markets, to exchange across time. For instance, when we save, those savings are made available to others who borrow them. So when we consume more than we currently have, we borrow. When we have more than we currently consume, we save. And most students are net borrowers because they're not really engaging in immediately productive activities. As students, you're not making money. In fact, you're spending it, and maybe taking out student loans while you're in order to do so. So it's not unusual for most students to graduate and have negative net worth. Net worth is the excess of one's assets over their debts. Well, most students don't have much in the realm of valuable assets, but they may have tens of thousands of dollars of student loans, and so they have negative net worth. Of course, the notion is that you've got an education to invest in yourself, and once you graduate, then you're going to be able to make enough money to pay off these loans and eventually to get ahead and start saving, that you're going to be better off for having made that investment in yourself, even if it required you to borrow money to do that. But being able to allocate resources across time through financial markets is a pretty amazing thing. There's another decision we all have to make with regard to this. That is, you've got the choice between, eating your profits. Let's say a company is profitable, has the decision to make between eating its profits, consuming that, or of investing in productive equipment, productive capital, productive goods. When we do that, when we commit resources to producing new capital, we make that investment in the future. It's called investment. We'll look at the production possibilities curve in the next video.